Okay, so tonight's speaker, again, I met him a couple of years ago, right before COVID. We sat down, like I normally meet people through Bigger Pockets, and I have coffee with them, or if they're really nice, they buy me lunch. But I think we had coffee, didn't we?
We had Chipotle.
Oh, we did.
It was really nice.
Oh, okay, okay. And so he starts talking about what he's doing in real estate, and I'm going, gosh, I've never heard that before. And I'm telling you, there's so many different things you can do in real estate that it's just amazing what people come up with. So Rafa said that he was literally knocking on doors to apartment complexes and asking them if he could rent the apartment, but then turn it into an Airbnb. And I thought, wow, brilliant. None of your money in this property, other than fixing up the place and making an Airbnb ready, and you're ready to go. You're getting cash flow. You're getting money coming in through the mail or electronically every month. And I go, wow, that's fantastic. So I had him speak. COVID hit, and we did a Zoom call. And like I said, I get more requests to get his information than any of my other speakers. Sorry to all my other speakers, but I get a lot of requests for him. He's here tonight to speak to us and tell us exactly what he does. He has been on a Bigger Pockets podcast as well, which is, I think, number 520.
Yeah.
520. So if you want to look that up, very interesting. I think you'll enjoy his talk and what he's doing. When we met, I believe he had 6 or 7 properties that he was doing this with, and I'll let you. He'll explain to you how many he has now and what he's doing.
Hey everybody, my name's Rafa. So I do what's called rental arbitrage. I guess that's what they call it now. I didn't know that's what it was called when I first started. But basically, currently I have 45 short-term rentals, 31 I manage directly, 14 are with friends and family, my girlfriend here being one of them. And yeah, it's what I've been doing for the past about 5 years. And basically, like he was saying, I work with investors, and now I work with investors. When I first started, I was working with anybody who let me. Property managers, big apartment complexes, REITs, so that I can get permission to rent out their place and then furnish it, and then put it on websites like Airbnb and direct, insurance companies and travel nurses and all that stuff. It's been about going on 5 years now. It's been a fun ride. When I met Joe, I actually had, I think, 15 at that time, Joe. And it was a little bit prior to COVID, and it was doing really well. There was a little bit of saturation in the market I was in Fullerton at that time. But I was trying to get into flipping. And I was big about reading Bigger Pockets and learning Bigger Pockets, and I've been listening to Bigger Pockets for years. And one of the strategies is find the best real estate agent in your market and go meet them. And Joe was that guy. And so I met up with him, and he was awesome. Actually, we did have coffee the first time. You were right. We had coffee the first time. We had a little conversation, and he invited me to come back and show me some of his properties, which was awesome. I ended up bringing my brother along. We went to a couple of your condo flips, I believe it was, which was awesome. And then COVID hit. And so instead of focusing on flipping and wholesaling, I needed to focus on saving my business, which was my short-term rentals. It was something like, I went from something like $70,000 in upcoming reservation revenue to about $700, literally like that. When the shutdown was announced. It was actually, I remember it perfectly, it was the moment that they said Disneyland was closing down. I was like, great, here we go, right? Because we rely heavy on Disneyland at that time. And I had a lot of 2-bedroom apartments. So I ended up focusing, I said, I either can focus on this cash cow of a business and save it, or I can, direct my time and energy to something else, which was at that time, some kind of different real estate avenue. And I decided to stick with short-term rentals. I ended up closing down 18 units. Not COVID related. It was due to COVID, but it wasn't directly because of COVID. The owner that I was with in the building, he sold the building because a lot of people weren't paying rent and he couldn't afford it. And so, unfortunately, I was one of the people that got stuck in that whole cell because I had 14 units in his building at the time. And being in that building for 3.5 years, when he sold, the owner didn't want any corporate leases or arbitrage or any type of Airbnb in his building, which is fine. It's, it's their building. They get to decide what they want. I'm pretty good about talking to people and explaining what I do and how I do it so that they allow me to do what I do. This guy wasn't having it. He just didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to have that type of business in his building. He was going to put some serious money into the building. So he asked us to leave. So we left. And it sucked. It was really hard, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise. Ever since COVID, which was, so when I closed down was last January. And from January to March, I've now built out 46 units. We've built out 46 units in the last 12 months, which has been awesome. I ended up making a really good relationship with one investor. And so, like I said in the beginning, I actually work with investors now, right? People have small complexes or small amount of properties where I lease them out, sometimes at market rate, sometimes a bit above market, depending on the person. And then I get them furnished, and I now house medical professionals, business travelers, just families here for leisure. I don't focus on Disneyland customers any longer because I like to not keep all my eggs in one basket, so to speak, right? Focus only on the families who are traveling for Disney. And I wasn't sure how it was going to be after COVID. So with this one investor, I ended up opening 28 properties with him. Anytime something comes available, I'm the first person he calls now. And then I took over a 8-unit building, a 12-unit building, and just recently in the last 3 weeks, we took over a 30-unit complex. And we just took over the entire thing. I was referred to this owner by a contractor. And this landlord was looking for one person to lease the entire place because he was a short-term rental operator in Huntington. And due to the partnership that he had, he didn't want to be the one managing, so he wanted one person to take over, and I happened to be that guy. So when we ended up, the deal we worked out, I was going to take all 30 units. We ended up doing only 16 of the units because of some disagreements, and now here I am. I'm 5 years later, 1 year after COVID, and again, 45 units and 31 I managed directly. That's my story from when I met Joe here. Prior to that, the reason why I got into rental arbitrage was when I first started investing, I was trying to do real estate investing. So I was trying to make some kind of cash flow. My thing was always been cash flow, get out of my job, make some cash. And I didn't care much about equity at the time. Now I'm starting to kind of care about it, which is why I'm shifting my focus. But it was, how can I make extra cash to have some extra spending money outside of my job, or at least get out of my job? And so I started doing research. I found a property for like 400 grand at the time. I had $20,000 in the bank, and I really couldn't afford to do anything with it, right? You can't, that's what, 5%? So I didn't have the credit or the income to do a 3.5 down. I didn't know much about real estate investing. I just thought it was buy a property on the market and hopefully get a renter and make some cash, right? And when I really quickly learned is that had I bought that property, I would have been negative a couple $100 a month, right? Because we don't account for property taxes, and we don't account for insurance and all the other stuff. And so at that same time, I met some guy who was driving, some 24-year-old kid who was driving a Ferrari, and I'm like, what is he doing? And turns out he had 7 apartments on Airbnb in one building. And so I was intrigued. I was like, you can do that? And that's kind of what got the ball rolling. I started learning about it, and then I was like, I stayed at Airbnbs before, right? It's a normal thing. I don't stay in hotels unless I go to Vegas. And so I found out what short-term rentals, and I started learning about short-term rentals, and I put two and two together. Airbnbs are short-term rentals, except, everybody talks about how we run an Airbnb business. That was the entire thing. I was like, I want to start an Airbnb. But then I got really educated about the business side of things, and I go, wait a second. Short-term rentals are short-term rentals. It's the strategy of real estate. Airbnb is just the marketing platform we use to acquire customers. And when I put those two together, I was like, I think I can do this. And I gave it a shot. It took me about 6 months of making phone calls and knocking on doors. At the time, I was working graveyard. And 6 months later, somebody said yes to me. It was a building, 110-unit building, or 210, I don't remember exactly. But they had about 60-something vacant units. And I was like, if this place tells me no, like, I'm just terrible at this, right? They had a bunch of vacancy. There's no way they're going to tell me no. So I went in, I gave my whole pitch. I told them what I did. At the time I had a pitch. Now it's all about conversations, and we'll get to that in a second. But I went in, and she's like, yeah, can you pay the rent? And so I'm like, well, I think I can. And I had, like, at that point, after 6 months, almost 8 months of living off the 20 grand that I had, working graveyard, spending my money, I only had about 6 grand left, and I opened my LLC literally the day before I went to that place. and put the money in a bank into my business bank account. And she told me, yeah, we'll lease it out to you. Let's give you a shot. And it was a 2-bedroom apartment. I got it in the middle of November. Don't quote me on the dates exactly. But it took us about 2 weeks actually, I got it in the beginning of November. It took me about 2 weeks to get it furnished. We got a designer in there. We ended up spending about $15,000 on it. I borrowed my brother's credit card. So I started with the credit card, and the $6,000 in cash was for the rent and the deposit. And the first 2 weeks of going live, I made back the $6,000. I'm sorry, no, the rent and the deposit, I made it back immediately. And I was like, wow, in 2 weeks, it was crazy. And so I was sold. And then the next month in December, I made about $6,000 in profit, and it was pretty much almost half of what I put into it. And so I said, hey, I'm going to go in on this business. And I opened another one. A month later, I opened another one. 9 months later, I had 14. By the third one, I quit my job. I just said, hey, I'm going to go all in on this. I quit my job at the casino. And ever since, it's what I've been doing. I've gotten really good at creating systems, processes. And now I work on the business a couple hours a week, basically just focus on my pricing and my occupancy, making sure we're always booked and making sure everything's running smoothly. I have a full virtual assistant team. We have 9 cleaners, I think, something about 9 cleaning ladies and gentlemen who clean for us. We have guest communication specialists, and we have a whole team basically to run the short-term rental company. And all I do is manage and create the systems for everybody to do that. So that's kind of my story so far. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, first question for me is, what's the first hurdle you faced, the first objection, the first challenge in the arbitrage space?
Yeah.
I'm sure, like you said, you had an X amount of dollars, you went to someone with 60 properties, how are you going to cover that rent? I'm sure that's the first thing that pops in people's mind. What's that first objection you typically handle, and how do you get over it?
Yeah, so the first objection I had was just getting over that no. I can't tell you guys how many, I probably went through 100 no's. Who wants to rent a property to someone to Airbnb it, right? But I learned how to talk to people and how to explain my business. If I go to you and I go, hey, can I lease out your property and put it on Airbnb, you'd be like, you're crazy, right? Because the first thing's gonna come to mind is you're gonna have parties, you're gonna have people trashing my place. But when you come in and you learn how to explain to people how we actually vet our guests, how we acquire our guests, how we handle the situations, the security systems we have, the processes we have to handle every single detail to, like, I can answer any question to the point to where you finally have no objection left. And if you still don't want to work with me, it's just because you don't want to work with me. It's not because you're against anything that I do, right? That was the first objection, is really getting comfortable in knowing what to say, how to talk to people, and how to address every single issue. Getting over all the no's of people telling you, no, hey, I don't want Airbnb in my building, right? Because even now, I still don't tell people I do Airbnb. I let them know that I do use it at some point, but I don't tell them, hey, I start off with Airbnb, especially because now I have a lot of different, after years of doing this, I've acquired so many different types of customers now that I get a lot of direct bookings from contractors and restaurants and nurses and insurance companies that I don't actually have to go in with the pitch of Airbnb anymore. I can go, hey, to give you an example, last year, I had an insurance company call me and go, hey, do you have a 2-bedroom available? It's a 90-day booking. I'm sorry, it was a 60-day booking, and they're gonna pay you $9,800. The first thing I did was, yeah, I have it. I had no idea, but I went out and got it immediately. I opened it a week and a half later. I said, yeah, it'll be ready by this time. They paid me $9,800. I used that money to go get the property, threw the people in there, and that property's been making me almost $2,000 a month since last March. And it's because of that, right? But that's the biggest objection. The hurdles as far as like income and stuff like that, I'm very good. You always want to run your numbers in any business you do, right? It's all about the math. If you run numbers and you see that you're not going to generate revenue, then there's no reason to jump into that business or that market or that rental or that unit, whatever it may be. I know that Southern California is a really good market. Pretty much I can open a unit across the street and make at least $1,000 a month, right? Because it's Southern California. And so once I got comfortable with knowing my numbers and knowing the details and knowing the type of customer that I was going to bring in first over everything else from there just became very easy. Does that answer it?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, for sure.
How do you get around the legalities of it? Because what I'm doing is I'm researching online where to do this stuff at.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I'm looking at each city, like, for example,
Sure.
Dana Point, San Juan, and I think San Clemente, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're open to STRs, but is it wrong when I'm thinking that some cities in Orange County are not allowing that?
Those three aren't.
Those 3 aren't. Okay.
Yeah, no, so you're Yeah, no, you're spot on. So the regulations are the biggest thing. So this is what separates a professional short-term rental operator versus someone who doesn't, like, they just think they can put up a property, right, on any random place. Number one is do your research, right? The first thing you ever want to do is find out what that city allows you. Every ordinance is city specific. The county may have one, but the city oversees that, right? The state may have one, but the city oversees it. So whatever city you're deciding you want to go into, you got to really look at the ordinance and say, okay, what can I do here? If you call, let's say I call, I don't know, Lake Forest, and I call the council person or whoever on the other line. I go, hey, can I do Airbnb in your building? Odds are they're gonna be like, no, you can't do Airbnb, right? But they don't know. It's just another person on the other end of the line. So what you really gotta do is you gotta pull the ordinance, the actual documents, you gotta read it, you gotta really understand it. Hey, what's a short-term rental? What's the city's definition of a short-term rental? Every city's different, right? Some cities give you 14 days. Some cities are 28 days. I've seen some cities do some random number like 23 days. Right? Whatever the actual short-term rental definition for that city is what you're allowed to do. Now, if they say you can't do short-term rentals, well, what's a short-term rental? 14 days. That means I can do anything over 14 days, right? I just can't do anything under. Yeah. No, you got to find it. So the easiest way is you go on Google and you just type in Lake Forest short-term rental ordinance, and then just go through the links until you find the actual document. I never call the city because, again, whenever I call somebody on the other line, it's just someone that doesn't know. They're not experts in the documents that the city drafted up. Right? Unless you talk to the person who actually wrote it and created the law, it's going to be another person that doesn't know or has no idea. They'll just think what they think and say, no, we're not allowing it. So you pull the ordinance, you really understand it, and then from there, it could be a zoning issue. A lot of places will tell you, hey, short-term rentals aren't allowed. But then you keep reading it, it's like they're not allowed in R2 or they're not allowed in R1s or they got to be in there's a weird one out in Fullerton now where they just told me I can't operate. It was like an EO3 or something. I'm like, I've never even heard of that. But everything is specific by zone, or it's specific by number of nights, or it's specific by, all you got to do is apply for a permit and pay us taxes, and we don't care what you do.
Okay, so
literally.
let's say the ordinance says, yeah, it's allowed.
Yeah.
So now you're going to the landlord for that unit or complex,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hire an interior designer for that first
Yeah.
job? You did.
So every single one of my units has been done by an interior designer. So that first unit, we went in there thinking, hey, we can do this, right? And learned that lesson really fast, really hard. We went in and we spent a bunch of money on a bunch of nonsense that we really didn't need. And when we went live, the first 2 weeks, a bunch of people were like, hey, you're missing this, hey, you're missing that. This thing had a patio like the size of this room, and we put nothing back there, right? We thought everything had to be inside. So we ended up bringing an entire designer, and I ended up putting in an extra, I think it was like $6,000. The $6,000 that I made, I actually put them back into the unit, and she came in and made that patio beautiful. And that unit, man, I wish they would never kick me out. I was doing like $3,500 a month in profit off that unit. It was crazy, every single month without fail, slow season or not. And it was because I ended up hiring a good interior designer. She came in and she moved a bunch of stuff inside. This frame doesn't go here. That plant doesn't go there. This couch should be there. And from there, every single unit that I've done, I hire an interior designer. I have a really good one now.
What about the cleaning aspect of it? Cleaning ladies, are you just sort of schooling that as well?
No. So that I started doing, it was on, my first cleaning lady came from Yelp. And I hired her and she was really good. And at the time, at the time, it was good because it was one unit and I didn't really have a system or a process for it. And all I needed was for her to show up and clean, and I would do all the extra work. Now, all my cleaning people have came from referrals from either other hosts who have shut down or other cleaners who didn't like working for other people, or usually comes from friends or family. Hey, like right now, one of our newest ones is one of my best friend's girlfriend's stepmom was working at a hotel. My best friend's girlfriend, she started cleaning some of our units. And she's like, hey, I'm going to bring my stepmom on. She doesn't want to work at the hotel anymore. They're paying her it was like $18 an hour. Now she's making $130 in 2 hours, right? And she comes in from 11 to 4 and she gets 4 or 5 cleanings done in one day, makes a bunch of money, and she loves it, and she's already professionally trained. We just train her to our standard. But now it comes from that because now I have a very specific process. Like I have a linen company that picks up all my linens Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? They pick up, drop off, pick up, drop off. I have a person who handles my storage. So they take the linens, they put them in the right places. My cleaning people show up in the beginning of the day. They grab everything from storage for the turn of the day. They drive to the unit, they turn the unit, they resupply the unit, they bring back all the leftover and the dirties, and that's how it goes. It's just a big rotation. So when I hire a cleaning lady, I hire someone for more than just cleaning, right? I require them to drive here. I require them to restock my coffee. They need to be the first set of eyes on my location, right? Is there damage on the table? Is the couch broken? Is the rug peed on by the dog? Is there scuffs on the wall? All of that, they look for it. And so when I first hire these people, that's the first thing I say. Hey, look, I'm looking for someone more than just cleaning, but that's why I'm going to pay you a little bit more, right? Not to mention, last Sunday we did 15 turns. We did something like 12 yesterday. Today I had like 6. Tomorrow I don't have any at all. But you know, throughout the month, I mean, I have one girl who manages my 8 cleaners, and I pay her, and she distributes the money to them. And I kid you guys not, last month I paid her like 18 grand, right? And that's only for like 6 people that she manages. And so it's constant work. So because of that, I'm able to negotiate better rates on my cleanings, and I'm going to keep them constantly working, so they love working for me. And I still recommend them because I don't want to get stuck with the whole California thing where they're my employees. Because you guys know California is like infamous about that.
All your properties are within the same area?
Yes, all of my properties are in Orange County. I just picked up 2. I actually just bought my first short-term rental. It's a duplex out in Wisconsin. It's being rehabbed right now. So as soon as maybe in the next month, I'm going to go and build a system out there. And probably opens a bunch of arbitrage units out there as well. It doesn't make sense I like to scale, so I'm all about scaling and building the systems and the processes for it. And I can't open any units in a market unless economies of scale, unless I can afford to have that there. So if I open one unit in a city 100 miles away from me, it doesn't make sense, right? Because I can't hire a handyman, I can't hire somebody to manage the whole thing there. A runner, we have someone I call a runner in case like the blender breaks. I'm not going to drive out and deliver a blender. I need somebody to handle it within the time that it happens, right? And so when I go to a different city or a different town now, it's got to be a certain amount of units. But right now, yes, they're all in Orange County. I think, one second, I'm sorry. I think he had a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
When you sign agreement with the landlord, who pays all the repairing stuff?
Oh, the what? I'm sorry?
The fixing.
Great question. So whenever I talk to a landlord, I cover everything up to $250, regardless of what it is. It's one of the incentives that I give them. If it's a recurring plumbing issue, like something, let's say the first plumbing issue comes up and I don't know, one of the pipes were clogged, we call a plumber out, it's $150, I'll pay it, right? If it fixes it, no harm, no foul, we move on with our lives, right? It's just an expense. We write it up as an expense. If it happens again next month, right, we fix it. If it happens again the 3rd time, it's obviously something's wrong with the apartment. I'm not going to pay for it anymore, right? Either get it fixed or you're going to be covering this every single month. So it's kind of it depends on the relationship with each person that I work with. If it's a property management company, like a big apartment complex with an actual maintenance guy, I just give them a call. Hey, and it's really important to build good relationships with management, right? Number 1, because you got to be transparent about what you do. Number 2, because of this. If I have an issue, a maintenance issue, I only have between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. to get it fixed. And I can't call them and hound them and upset them, right? But as a favor, they'll go, hey, yeah, we'll send someone out and handle it right away. If not, you just get put on the list. And when it happens to get fixed, it happens to get fixed. But any major issues that, like, if I'm at fault, I cover it. For example, we had last night, first time I ever encountered it, there was a domestic dispute in one of our units. Luckily, I took over it's an 8-unit complex. 2 girls, they checked in. One girl brought some friends over. This other girl got really upset, and she was kind of like a hostage situation. She wouldn't let them leave. Cops got called like at 3 a.m. We didn't even know about it until our guests in that same building called us. It was like 9 cop cars outside. They broke down the door with one of those jackhammer things. I show up like at 5 a.m. this morning, and doors destroyed, and that's a major damage. That's like a $1,200 fix, right? The door was like $600. It was a Craftsman custom-made door. And so I was upset, but I have insurance in all my units, so I'm going to file an insurance claim with Airbnb. I'm going to file an insurance claim with mine, and whichever one takes care of is who I'm going to go with. I don't take both. And luckily, I have a really good relationship with the landlord. And so I go, hey, can we get your contractor out here today? And he goes, what happened? And I go, I just explained it to him. And he's like, bro, and I'm like, hey, it's the first time it happens, and he knows what I do. And we actually have like a really friendly relationship now. We're more friends now. And so he did me a favor. He called his contractor. They went and repaired the door within 2 hours. I paid it out of pocket, but when I file a claim, I'm going to get reimbursed for it. And that was...
Airbnb insures automatically, right?
Yeah.
And do they work well?
No. So no, they're terrible. You never want to rely on Airbnb insurance. Number 1, you get what they tell you. I had a guy who stole parking fobs. Stupidest thing, parking fobs. They're $250 to replace. And so I filed a claim, And the rep on the other line goes, well, based on the market numbers that we ran, we think that they're valued at $35. So here's $35. And I disputed it, and it's like, well, our decision's been made. Sorry, here's $35. Take the $35 and run, right? But they're terrible. Sorry, I'm sorry. 1 second. She had a question back here.
How many units in were you before you realized that you needed to have a system and have more people involved?
Yeah. So I was stubborn. I think 18. And then it became a problem where, like, imagine like right now, where like I'd have to respond to a guest inquiry. That's when I hired my first virtual assistant. I went through about 6 of them until I hired like a rock star, and now she's like my manager VA. She sources VAs. I have 2 VAs now. One covers from 10 to 6, and one covers from 6 to 2. And then night's empty because nobody ever messaged you at night. Even last night, like I didn't even get a message. I only found out because we had 3 cancellations in that building. Other guests canceled because they felt unsafe, which sucks, but you know. So 18 units is when I actually decided, but there's 2 things here, right? I built a system for like specifics from day 1, like automated messaging. That was from day 1. Things like check-in instructions, things like checkout instructions, things like review requests, things like hey, you know, thank you for staying with us. And like it's like I call it the morning after message. I get a message that says, hey, thanks for staying with us. If there's anything wrong with the apartment, please let us know now so we can handle it to make your stay more comfortable. If you need to use the washer, it's here. If you need to use the trash can, it's there, or the dumpster. And by the way, make sure you explore, I don't know, Santa Ana, for example, my Santa Ana units. And then I'll give a couple referrals of some of my favorite restaurants. It's just customer service, but it's automated. I don't have to send it anymore. So that was one of the first things I did. The second thing, before that was pricing. You want to automate you want to use dynamic pricing always, right? You're not going to sit there and price out your days, and you're not going to price out everything the exact same. You're going to leave money on the table. But the major systems on how to handle like specifics, like if a guest is causing problems, if a guest is being too loud, if a party's being thrown, that took me about 18 units to actually say, hey, all right, it's time for you to like sit down, write this stuff down, hire somebody. And thank God I did, because I'd be miserable right now if I not. Yes. Sorry, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
What criteria do you look for in a short-term rental outside of the city actually allows it? But what makes a good rental for you?
The numbers. So I run every number now. For example, I'm in a very specific niche, right? I'm not in a vacation rental market, although technically OC is kind of vacation rental. But I take over small apartment complexes, right? I don't go to these big giant 200-unit complexes anymore. I take over 8 units, 12 units, 24 units, and 30 units. So I'm looking for very specific customers, and I run my numbers based off of that. So a 1-bedroom, I want it to make me at least $1,700 a month. A 2-bedroom, at least 25 to 28, average for the year. And then a 3-bedroom, at least $3 grand. Sorry, no, the 2-bedroom's 22 to 28. So I'm happy with wherever I get there. But that's average. For example, January could be a loss, but July is going to be a, I don't know, $5,000 profit on a 1-bedroom, right? And it's happened. So that's literally what I look for. And as long as I can house the customers that I want is where I go. If there's an airport within 10 miles, I know I'll probably be okay. If there's a hospital within 10 miles, I'll probably do great, because right now the medical professional industry is really, really short on staff, like crazy short. So they're paying people top dollar to become travel nurse and travel medical professionals. And I want to be the guy who houses them, right? So that's what I look for. Outside of that, like I love vacation rental markets, like the Joshua Trees of the world, right? That place blew up in the last year because of COVID. I was looking at property there. When I first talked to you, I had a plot of land under contract for 10 grand. I passed on it for the same reason. I was saving the business. Right now it's worth like 76K, and it's a tiny little like quarter acre. So, wow. Sorry, you guys had a question over here. So.
Are you changing up the locks for the landlords, like keyless entry and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, so all my doors are keypad entry. You never want to give anybody keys, right? Safety issues. But they're all keypad codes, and they just get rekeyed to the key that they give me, or I give them a copy of the new key. They normally don't care. Again, it's all about transparency with the people you work with.
Where do you typically find your VAs?
So I've done everything from virtual assistant finder. I forgot the other one, but it's another virtual assistant. Fiverr, I've done Upwork, I've done Facebook groups. The best one, my rockstar VA right now, like absolutely love her. She was a referral from another operator who I helped get started. He trained her, hired her, and then he ended up saying, hey, I don't want VAs anymore. I'm going to have people here who are going to take care of it. And so he referred it to me, and that's how I ended up keeping her. But Facebook groups is a really, really big one because there's a lot of people who are closing down units or just deciding that they don't want to do this anymore. And they can refer people to you, and they're already trained and vetted.
Like arbitrage groups? Is that what you're referring to?
No, any short-term rental group, any real estate group, to be honest. I get messages all the time. Yes?
Could you go through how you contact the property management?
Yeah.
Kind of what you say, what your presentation is?
Yeah, absolutely.
How you get past the guard as far as talking to the property manager?
Mm-hmm. So there's two things here. I no longer go to property managers, right? One, the word's out on short-term rental arbitrage. Everybody wants to do it now, which means pretty much any building you call right now, they've already been through somebody's pitch. Like, no joke, any building you call right now. And so especially here. You go to Costa Mesa, guys, it's like, just give up. Like, I know every building in Costa Mesa already has had some kind of operator. I was one of those. I was in like 5 buildings out there. I've been kicked out of a bunch of buildings over there because of bad operators. So I don't go to property managers anymore. I work directly with small investors who own small pockets of properties. And so, but the conversation's simple. The first phone call, either I meet them at a network meetup, this guy that I work with now, funny story, I actually met him a long time ago and I didn't know who he was. And then I made a phone call and he had his apartment on rent.com. And I called him and we gave it was, hey, you know, my name's Rafa with 9 Ring Properties. I'm a short-term rental corporate housing provider. Would you be interested in doing a corporate lease? And that was it. And I don't give anything else over the phone, right? The whole point is to get there to see the property and have a conversation in person. You give a pitch over the phone, you sound like you're selling something and they don't care. They're just gonna be like, no, thanks, I'm not interested. So based on that small, because I gave a few keywords, right? Short-term rental and corporate housing. And so based on their level of knowledge of what those words are, I wait for their response. They'll either tell me, no, we don't want any short-term rentals here. Or yeah, we do corporate housing. And then the next thing is, okay, so do you guys allow short-term rentals within the corporate housing? Because corporate housing is a very different meaning for a lot of different people. For example, property management companies, they think that you're gonna bring your own employees and keep them in your location, right? Or they think that it's a 30-day minimum corporate housing. Or it could just be that my corporation is the one signing the lease and they wanna know why is your corporation signing the lease instead of you, right? Which is the guarantor or whatever. And so, not to mention these big giant property management companies and the REITs, like all these other big places, when there's a property management company in place, they already have a process and a system to what they allow and what they don't allow. So they're not gonna care who you are. I don't care that you solve my vacancy problem. We already account for 10% vacancy anyway, right? I don't care that you're gonna be the best tenant ever because we turn those units regardless whether you're great or not at the end of it. Or they're gonna say, hey, we want 2 years business history and we wanna see 5 months bank statements and we need to see business credit up to a certain level. And if you can't meet that, especially if you're new or you're just starting, that you're gonna get the boot out the door. As opposed to if you work with an investor whose we're solving problems, right? Real estate is solving problems regardless of the strategy. Their issue is, hey, I have this property that's been vacant for a couple months, I'm losing money, right? And then I come in and I tell them, hey, look, this is what we're doing with the property, this is how it's gonna look, this is what's gonna happen. Odds are, once I figure out what their problem is, they'll probably allow me to do my thing. The guy that I have the 28 units with, I think I talked about this on the podcast a little bit. The first thing, so we make the phone call, I show up, it's a 12-unit complex. I have 9 units in the build, 9 or 8 at Garfield? 8. So we have 8 units at this building. And I show up and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna have a good conversation with this guy. Really, he's looking all professional, cool guy. He opens his door, I walk in and he goes, listen, man, I don't want any Airbnb here. First thing he says, I haven't even introduced myself yet, right? And I'm like, okay, well, before I tell you how I use Airbnb, let me tell you what I actually do, right? And he was like, he thought I was gonna be like, oh man, all right, I'm sorry, and walk away. No, look, listen, let me tell you what I do, right? And then I'll tell you how I use Airbnb. And if you don't wanna work with me at this point, no harm, no foul. I go on my way and find someone else. And look, I have 32 of his locations now, right? 28 I manage, and I gave 4 away to my friend, two to a friend and 2 to a brother of mine. And so, that they manage. And so we had an hour conversation. It was simple. I was like, look, I'm in the short-term rental business for corporate housing for specific customers. I'm not in the Airbnb business. Same thing, right? When you guys get Airbnb out of your mind as an Airbnb business, it's gonna solve all your problems because now you're not focusing on one thing, right, which is Airbnb. I simply told him, hey, look, I'm housing business professionals, and I show you how. And I showed him some of my prior units, right, the things we put in the building, right, printer, high Wi-Fi, desk, work boards, like all the stuff tailored for business professionals. And then we went into how well we take care of the property. And his building was brand new remodel. Sweet spot, guys, find people that are remodeling buildings. Guaranteed. Not only is it money, number two, they're going to want to work with you because now I'm taking, like I have a 9-unit right now that I'm about to take over. And I've been waiting for it to be rehabbed since like last October, before that probably. And it's still in the process of permitting. And I'm like, dude, every so often I just call this guy and go, yo, when is it going to be ready? Don't forget about me. I'll take all 9. And he knows that when they're ready when they're live, I'm leasing all of them. Instantly like that, his vacancy's done, right? And he doesn't have to worry about 1 month getting 3 people, being vacant on the other 7, the next month getting more people. So once I started talking to him and I said, hey, look, I'll take the entire building, but if you're not comfortable, like so it was about an hour-long conversation. And I said, look, I'll take the entire building, right? If you're not comfortable, just try me out. Give me one for 6 months. And if you're not happy, no harm, no foul. I pick up my stuff and I go, right? And here we are, 32 properties later.
Do you have a presentation like you put together? Like
No, it's all about a conversation that I have.
you just showing pictures on your phone, like this is how.
Well, so I don't even do that sometimes. So remember, it depends on, when you have this conversation with people, it depends on what their what they ask for. His concern was don't use Airbnb. I said, okay, this is what I do. And this is what I told him. I said, look, I'm housing medical professionals, business travelers. I'm housing families here for leisure, for the park, people who are coming to the beach. I'm not just letting any random person walk in with a keg and a DJ system into your apartment, right? Like, we vet these people. We have security systems in place, right? Not to mention, I'm about to drop 15 grand in a 1-bedroom apartment to get it furnished beautifully. You think I'm gonna let somebody come in and trash it? And so I go, and so once we started talking, he goes, he was like, oh, I like that. I've never heard of that before. He had 2 concerns. He goes, so if I tell you no Airbnb, we can't work together? He was already intrigued at the fact that I was willing to take the entire building, right? And the fact that he goes, no Airbnb, I said, look, I'm not gonna lie to you. The answer is no, because I don't want you I'd rather you be skeptical about it right now than you be upset at me a month later when you find out I use Airbnb. I'll tell you now, I will use Airbnb. It's a marketing platform. I don't do 100% direct bookings. I do have insurance company. That insurance company I told you about, it's in one of his buildings. I actually ended up taking over a 2-bedroom that I didn't want there. But it came from that. I go, I can't always get people outside of Airbnb. So on the days that I don't have somebody, I need Airbnb. Same as I need Booking.com, same as I need Vrbo, right? Expedia, all these other websites, Furnish Finder, all these other companies. And otherwise, how can I pay you your rent? And he's like, that makes sense. And then he goes, his second concern, what about squatters? I don't want any squatters in my building. And I'm like, I've never heard that one before. Yeah, I go, hey, that's the beauty of it, is that if anybody squats, it's gonna be me because I'm the guy on the lease, right? My people can't squat because they don't get actual tenant rights because they're not there for enough time to take advantage of a building or an apartment. And if they do, I'm awkward. Like, I'll move in with these people and make them even more uncomfortable till they leave. You know what I mean? Like, I will, because I'm trying to save my relationship here. Like, no joke, I'll do what it takes. I'll give them keys for cash, whatever the case may be. But I was like, I've never had that issue. I've been at it for 3.5 years. It's the weirdest, like, this is the first time I actually have a guy tell me that their concern was squatters. Yeah, it's getting super warm in here. And then the final thing, when I explained all that to him, this guy, listen to this, guys. I have 32 of his units, and the guy's never ran my credit once. Not my personal, not my business. All he wanted to see was my bank account to make sure I had enough money to cover his rent. That was his biggest concern out of all of them. Can you really pay my rent? And I said, bro, I'm willing to take a 12-unit complex. Why would I say that? And once I showed him the bank account for my other units, he was like, okay. And before I even gave him a chance to talk, I was like, give me 6 months, try me out. A week later, after seeing me work and hustle and build a unit, you want another one? And I'm like, I'll take the whole building. And he's like, well, let's just do one more just to be safe. And now look, I mean, I literally have every single one of his units. Anytime one comes available, I'm the first guy he calls. Rafa, what's up? I got one right now. And I'm like, I just opened a duplex Monday. We went live on Monday, this past Monday, and it was his. And he's like, and now it's kind of like this like push and like tug of war where he goes, I don't know if I want to give you no more units. I'm like, quit lying, dude. I'm gonna be the person you call, right? And he's like, well, I got somebody offering me $2,900 for this unit. I go, do you know where your location is? Like, no, nobody's gonna pay you $2,900 here, right? And it's like this give and take where like, I'm now okay giving him a couple $100 more so he makes more money because of the relationship we have, right? because he makes more money, I make more money, he gives me more units, right? So that's why I said, depending on who I work with, like a property management's not going to negotiate rent with you. This is the rate and that's it, right? This guy will I'll give you guys a perfect example before, I'm talking a lot. Can I keep talking? Cool. So this same guy, when I took over this first 12 unit complex, I ended up doing 8 of his units there, right? Because he leased out 4 other ones, which I was upset about. But he had this other building. It was a 24 unit complex and they're lofts. They're in downtown Santa Ana lofts. Like literally, who's familiar with downtown Santa Ana? Like at the 4th Street Market, right above them are my lofts. And so I have units there. And so when I first went there, he wanted $3,000 a loft. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. Like imagine like this hallway here times 2 with the bed on top with the ladder. And I'm like, ain't nobody gonna pay you $3,000 for that. Like nobody's going to pay you that. And so I'm like, 2 of them were really nice. And I'm like, well, I can make some good money off of these 2, right? It has like a garage door and it opens up and it's like beautiful. So I was like, okay, I'll take 2. You know, and so it becomes an addiction. You just don't want to pass up on these things. And so I took 2, okay? And it was 24 units, 22 at the time. Fast forward about about half a month later, I'm working on the 8 and the 2 at the same time. We're building them out. And another guy comes in and he leased out like 3. Doing the same thing. He saw what I was doing and he's like, I want to do what he does. And so he leased them out to him and like he's trying to get me to like teach him and stuff like that. And like 2 weeks later, he goes, hey, do you want more units? And immediately I know he's coming to me because he's charging really high for these lofts. Like nobody's going to pay you that, right? Number 1, it's downtown Santa Ana. Number 2, it's $3,000. We're not there yet, right? We're not there yet. Maybe in a year from now. Even now, it's still too expensive. And so I'm like, hey, look, I'll take it, but you got to give me something here, right? And we negotiated a free months. I ended up taking 3. And he gave me a free month on each one. 3 months rent. Immediately that cuts your startup cost in half, right? Because it's the rent and deposit. Not only that, I negotiated the deposit at $750. So now I'm looking at only $750 plus furnishing cost. So at the end of the month, 2 weeks later, he comes back to me and he goes, hey, and I go, let me guess, they're not renting. And so he goes, he said he had like 7 more. And I'm like, COVID's still kind of in the air. I don't know if I'm gonna like end up shutting down a bunch of units. And so I'm like, dude, look, I'll take 2 more, but you gotta give me a sweet deal. And he goes, I'll give you 2 free months. And I said, no. I go, I'll take 3. You give me 2 free months on these and the last 3. I ended up saving $76,000 off of that one deal. And all I did was have a conversation with the dude that I like to work with, right? I ended his problem, which is the vacancy. And I could have either divided those 2 free months over a period of 12 months and lowered my rent, or I could take the money up front, right, as no money up front, which means my startup cost is 0. When I go live, I had a month and a half to make money for free. I made my entire startup cost on those units in the first month and a half. Everything after that was profit based on that one negotiation, and it came from just having a conversation with this guy. So I like working with investors now. Like now that people know what I do, I get phone calls all the time, and they're like, hey, dude, I have an 11 unit. Do you want it? I just gave away a 10 unit out in Atlanta because I'm not doing it in Atlanta. I have a guy, I had a meetup in Santa Ana last week. Was it last week, Joe, I told you about? Yeah. And a guy showed up and he goes, hey, I have an 11 unit in Inglewood. You want it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm open to it. Right before this, a guy called me and it's a 7 unit hotel overlooking the beach in, what's that beach on the left of Huntington? Laguna? Past Laguna? I don't know. Some beach town out here. Corona Del Mar. And he's like, the owner's willing to let you do what you do. Are you interested? And I'm like, well, let me look at the regulations and everything. But it's a hotel, so I'm okay. There's no regulation for hotels. And they want me to arbitrage a hotel, right? And it's just like this, having conversations with people and knowing that I'm the best at what I do for this. And this is the biggest thing, 2 things. You're going to trash my property or you can't pay rent. Well, I'm already paying about $100,000 a month in rent. I can guarantee I can pay the rest, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. Number 2, the way you got to teach people and get them out of that mindset of you're going to trash my property. Look, I rent my place for $200 a night. You think someone's going to rent my place at $200 6 months from now if it looks like crap and it's trash and destroyed? No. It means I have to keep it in top shape. It means that there's never going to be any damage to the property itself. What does that mean? If in a year from now you don't want me anymore, you get it back exactly how it is right now, right? Because those of you who have long-term tenants, go ahead.
Are you always locked in for a year? You know, for a standard 1 year?
Yeah, so it depends. When I jump into a building first, it's always 1 year, but right now I just signed the lease on that unit that I told you guys about. I just did a 2-year lease. I've done as big as 3, but usually it's 2, 1, 2, 3, depends. I've done as little as 6. I actually like the small ones because even after 6 months, they forget about it and they just let me operate and I'm not locked in for anything. Yeah, and I'm still at the same amount of rent. They don't care because they see that it's constant. But going back to the point, right, the long-term tenants, like when you have a long-term tenant in your unit, like when's the last time somebody actually hired a professional cleaning company, right? We do this 7, 8 times a month. The property looks spotless. And that's when you get that out of their head, they're like, oh, you're right. No one's gonna pay me $200 for a beat up couch and a beat up scuff on the walls. We end up touching stuff up every 6 months anyway, because people get scuffs on the walls and couches break. I actually just had my first couch break after 3 years. And all I did was replace it. So.
Are there areas you stay away from?
Anaheim, the permits there are 100 grand minimum, and you have to buy them from someone who's already operating. The city doesn't give them out anymore. Garden Grove doesn't allow it. And I stay away from unreasonable landlords, people that just try to take advantage of you. Not every yes is a win, right? Just to give you guys an example, this 30-unit complex, once he saw how well we were doing, he's a short-term rental operator. Immediately he's like, I want an extra $300 for all the units upstairs. And I'm like, no, that's not what we talked about, right? And then he started asking for like these unreasonable demands, and I'm like, keep your units, man. I don't want them, right? So I stay away from specifically that.
Also, in your contracts, like, if there's like a downtime, like COVID hits, and like what happened to you in the past, how do you get out of those?
Oh, that's a great question. So before I didn't know any better. I learned from COVID. Now, all my landlords know that if anything does happen like that, I have a clause to where they keep all my deposits, and then I have 1 month to find them a tenant. And if I can find them a tenant, no harm, no foul. If not, then I just got to pay them for 1 month's rent and I can leave, which is the beauty of working with people you're good with, right? A property management company will never let you do that. They'll be like, nah, man, our process is you got to owe us either the rest of the rent or you owe us 2 months rent or whatever it is that's in their lease.
Oh, just that means you offer the lease agreement, not the landlord does.
I offer it? No, they offer it. The only thing I put in the lease, it's a regular tenant lease. There's nothing special about it. I'm just a regular tenant. I just have permission to do what I do on my property. And there's 3 things you got to do. One of 3 things. You got to get it on the lease that you're allowed to use it as a vacation rental, or you got to put on the lease a subletting clause that says you're allowed to sublet the property. Technically, we're subletting. We're not really subletting because nobody signs a lease underneath us anyway, but that's the way the world sees it. And then, or get a subletting addendum, just a page on the back that says, hey, Rafa can do whatever he wants with this building within reason of the lease. And that's it. That gives you protection.
If you leave a property, do you have to bring it back, like take the door locks out, and all these things?
Yeah. The last building, so you again, it's all about relationships, right? I don't want never burn a bridge. I want to be in any relationship. Some of the property like one of my very first buildings, they kicked me out, right? And I turned it back up perfect to how it was. And the girl was like, hey, don't paint it because we're going to charge you for the paint anyway. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I left it how it was. I took everything, I put everything back exactly how it was. Carpet got washed, all of that. We got it cleaned and I handed it to them. And she's like, man, I love that you did that. You saved my life so much easier, right? Made my life so much easier. She got fired from that building. And 2 years later, she's calling me, hey, I'm at a new building. What's up? You want some units here? And it came from that. I never want to burn a bridge. Only one time did I do that when they actually, that guy that sold the building, he kicked me out. He's like, don't touch anything, leave it alone, just get out. He actually ended up buying me out of my lease, which it ended up being a positive for me anyway. But some of those units were destroyed because it was literally like run in and pull everything out and go. Because he only gave me a certain amount of time and it was 14 units. It's the only time I've ever not turned a unit back to how it was.
Are you contacting an attorney to draft up that addendum or something?
No. You can, but it's just a regular lease. You just got to add a subletting addendum. And they're everywhere. You can find them online. They're super easy. I now have my own, but
What kind of insurance do you buy?
yeah. So you got to get short-term rental insurance, right? Not any insurance company is going to, now they're getting more popular, but not any insurance company is going to insure you because you're rotating through people. And so there's a company called Proper Insurance that I use. They're extremely expensive. Just in the last year, they like tripled. A 1-bedroom cost me like $130 a month or something like that. But they cover the entire building. So like if the building burns down, the owner gets the check. I don't get a check, but I get covered for all my stuff inside and all my lost revenue. Making sure that, as long as it falls within the insurance. But I've never had to use an insurance claim. Thank God. Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
How much, it's random because I'm an architect, how much do you pay your interior designers per job? And then what's your legal system set up, like an LLC? Do you have an LLC set up for each one or for each building? Or
Yeah.
what do you do?
So first question, my interior designer, I've worked with all kinds of interior designers. I've paid one that charges me per square foot.
Oh, interesting.
She charges $25 a square foot, which is extremely expensive. But this lady, the service she provides is, give me the keys, leave, here are the keys, it's ready, take photos, put it up. That's it. I do no work, right? But that's why it's expensive. I don't have to build furniture. I don't have to put art on the wall, nothing. She just goes, hey, it's here, boom, here are your keys, take the photos. In some cases, they'll take the photos for you, and you're done.
And you just give her a budget, like I need you to hit this.
No, it's $25 a square foot.
No, but I mean, of like the furnishings and.
No, it doesn't matter. Like for her, it doesn't matter. If it's 1,000 square foot building, she's gonna charge you 25,000.
No, but I mean, yeah.
She does. That's part of the package.
Oh, that includes.
It includes, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It includes everything. The only thing it doesn't include is electronics. No TVs and wall mounts. So you got to pay for that. And she's awesome. She's built out like 5,000 short-term rentals. Another one that I paid for did it was a Zoom type of design, right? We got her on the phone. She walked through the building. She found stuff online. She told me what to order. It got delivered. She told me where to put it. She charged me something like $500. Plus, she was trying to work with me because she knows I have a really good network of like short-term rental operators now. And so she gave me a deal. Now, my designer happens to be a relative of mine. And she turned out to be awesome. It's my sister, actually, my younger sister. And she's like, hey, I think I can do this. I've been really good at design. And I'm like, oh, I'll give you a shot. And so she blew me out of the water. I mean, she did amazing. And she's done, how many units now? 36 or something? No, she's done a lot. And she does amazing. And she charges me $1,500 because I'm always hounding it. Like, stop, $1,000. But other people, like somebody from my network just flew her out to Texas and she did it was like a 6-bed, 4-bath house, and they were like blown away by it. So now she's starting to get traction. So now she's starting to get expensive. But the average is anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000, depending on what you want. Some will do the work for you. Some will just tell you what to do, and you got to go in and do the work, or hire some guys to go do the work for you. That's really how it goes. Best way is to just talk to a bunch of them and see which one works for you and suits your needs, and make sure they have experience, right?
Do you buy all the furniture or you lease it?
I buy everything. Yeah, I have like, kid you guys not, like 85 TVs right now. It's crazy. Yeah, it's.
And what about your LLCs?
Oh yeah, the second question. I'm sorry. Everything is under an LLC, one LLC. Yeah, and reason being is because that's the way my CPA told me to do it. And when I first started, I never thought I would scale this large. Thank God it's scaled large. So this year we're actually creating an S corp and doing a webbing of things.
So right now you just have like one K1 and that's it?
Yeah, it's just one LLC. So I don't even know what K1 means, to be honest. They handle everything. I have a bookkeeper that's amazing. One of my best friends, again, relationships. This girl, she's working for this major like construction company. And I'm like, hey, you want to do my books? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, come on, I'll pay you. And she's like, okay, fine. And she's always like, oh, you're crazy. Like, short-term rentals this, short-term rentals that. When I first started 5 years ago, she did my books for 2 months. Now she's got like 5 short-term rentals, right? And she's been my bookkeeper since. And the trade-off is, hey, I help you get started. You're going to do my books forever. So like, she's locked in for life. And, it's a great deal. So, but she does everything I need with my CPA, and they do everything together, and they just tell me what needs to get done. I just overlook at everything. The guy, when I first started, he's like, look, we can do an S corp, and you're going to have to build stuff out. But because I don't own the property and my insurance covers enough, that was enough. Now that I've started buying property, it's now a separate entity for each property that I own, and one for my arbitrage business. Because essentially, if something happens to me, they're just taking my leases away.
Yeah.
Right? So, sorry, he has a question over here.
The communication between guests and you is done through virtual assistants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you technically can have STR property anywhere in like the United States, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's why. So for like right now, my Wisconsin property, my job is to make sure they understand everything about the property. Because otherwise, when a guest asks them, hey, where do I park? They don't know where to park. They've never seen the property. So what I do now, again, goes back to your processes and your systems you create. Anytime I get a property, I record a video of the entire thing. I take aerial screenshots on Google Map, and then I do a Zoom call, and I walk them through it, and I record it all on Loom. So whenever they need to go back and have any don't bother me anymore, you have the video, go watch it, review it, answer whatever question you need, right? And it's building the process for that. But the guest communication is simple. It's just customer service and hospitality.
Do you need a like representative in that area who can like really can go there and look around?
It depends. So it depends. This is why I was saying like I would never go anywhere far based on what I need. You need things like a maintenance person. You need boots on the ground, right? If your guest in, for example, my Milwaukee house gets locked out, right? Like I'm not gonna fly there to open the door for them. I need to have a backup set for it. As long as you have a backup for everything in order to solve problems from afar, you have an issue. Let's say the iron broke, right? And they need to iron clothes. Like that's a big deal for some people. They're not gonna go and buy one. You gotta get one to them immediately. What's your system for that? Do you have somebody on the ground that can go and pick it up and drop it off for them? If not, how are you gonna handle it? Is the guest okay waiting a day while Amazon delivers one? Or can you do 2-hour shipping from Target, right? I've done it all. So it depends on what that process is to keep the people happy. Remember, you're in the hospitality business. We're not in real estate anymore, we're in hospitality. And so in order to be able to solve all those problems immediately, to keep that experience going and keep them happy, you need to be able to know how to solve every problem regardless of where it's at. I've had a lot of problems in my own backyard, right? There's some of my properties that I haven't been to in years now, and they're literally 5 minutes away from me, right? That's an awesome question. No, I do not. So this girl started as a cleaner, and then she became my storage manager. So she restocks everything. She now even has permission to spend up to $200 to any restock to go out and buy it, right? But she started as a cleaning company herself, and I said, hey, you want more work? I'll pay you $25 every time you need to stock my storage, right? And then she realized it's 3 times a week, right? So that's already $75 a week. And then I said, hey, you want to be my runner? And this is the beauty about building a system. You only use them for the top emergencies, right? If I absolutely need to call you, you go handle it, and then she charges me accordingly. Usually it's just $25. Hey, I went to the store, picked up a blender, delivered it, $25, right? But if it's something major where like she has to sit there for a plumber and wait for the plumber to fit it, then she's gonna charge me more because it's worth her time. But I keep her busy. She does probably 3 cleanings a day, and she stocks my storage, and she does runs, and she goes to Costco and buys supplies, and she's the one that gets my Amazon packages and puts them in my, right? So it's just constant work. We've done college kids, just put up a sign around the local college. When you guys are free, hey, $25 to go do a couple tasks, right? I know another guy that does, on his Airbnb settings, or actually what he does is he charges 1%, no, 2%, I don't know, some kind of percent, for all revenue. And he gives that 2% or 1% to one person. So if he does $1 million, that person keeps that 1 or 2%, but they're in charge of doing all. Like, hey, if someone calls you at 3 a.m., you got to run out there and handle that situation at 3 a.m. But imagine, I mean, if you do 7 figures, that's a lot of money, right? So, yes.
1099 everyone.
Yes.
Absolutely.
This is why, even for my cleaners, I push them to do other people's works, because you can get really quickly intertwined into this are your employees because they do nothing for work. I make a point of saying, hey, do you need a cleaner? Right? I got someone, and I have it in writing in case anybody comes up to me and go, no, dude, look, she went and cleaned for him. Here's the proof. We showed it. She got paid from them. Yes. That's why I made a point of it, because I don't want to get stuck with that. But I give them enough work to keep them if I wanted to.
Do you ever ask the landlord to fix up the hallway or the building from the outside? If you're spending all this money on the units and the issues in the building?
So this is why I like working with investors and why I said go after contractors and rehab projects. Every single one of my units, every single one has been a new construction. I don't have anything sitting. That's why I don't go to property management, George, anymore, because I don't want to go to a dingy old spot that's had 50 tenants and they just did some touch up on the walls and everything's falling apart, right? You drill a hole in the wall, it's already 7 holes that have been patched up with a patch. Every single one of my units is a brand new build. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Costa Mesa's regulations and ordinances?
Yeah.
What are they?
They're on and off. They're constantly changing. But I've been in Costa Mesa for 4 years.
So I
Never
got
had
a
an
friend
issue.
that's got a 4-plex and 1 unit's about to be vacant. So
Yeah, there you go.
there's a chance.
Yeah, there is. So Costa Mesa at one point banned it. They did nothing about it. So they took it away. The beauty about Costa Mesa is that you're going to find there's a lot of 30-day minimums. My majority of Costa Mesa, I have 2 there now only, actually. And both of them are always booked at either 15 or 30 or 65 days, always at a really good rate. And they do great, man. Costa Mesa is awesome. Give me 1 second. They do really awesome because everything on the side of between Santa Ana and Costa Mesa towards Tustin is all industrial, and it's a lot of international companies. I got the idea because when I was 18, I was actually working for an international company that, you guys know those 2 high-rise buildings off the 55? They lease the entire top 3 floors just for their employees. Yeah, I think I don't know what it is. But I was like, what I'm doing, different style. Costa Mesa is gold.
Okay, thank you. Do you get grandfathered in if they change the rules on you? Or?
Yes, so it depends. Fullerton just passed their first ordinance, and all I had to do was apply for the permit. Anybody who's already got it and applies for the permit does get grandfathered in. But for example, Irvine, they had a permit, and they allowed it, and then all of a sudden they said no, and it doesn't matter, grandfathered or not, they just closed it off. But because nobody fought it, right? Depends. Remember, it's councilmen. It goes based off what the people vote. And so, for example, Disneyland, they banned it, and Disneyland is like 1,000-something short-term rentals. They all got together, and what they did is they sued the city, and they actually it was a big legal battle. Anaheim lost. They ran out of funds to fight the battle, and so what they did is, hey, not to mention they weren't endorsing any laws because they don't have the manpower or the resources to be going out to every unit and finding and doing all that stuff, right? And so ultimately they said, hey, we'll allow you guys to do your thing. We just don't want. It turned out that it was just one tiny neighborhood that was fighting it the whole time, and it happened to be a really wealthy neighborhood. So they were the ones who said, hey, we don't want this to happen. And so, long story short, they allowed it again only if you were grandfathered in. And now the only way to get into it, well, some people say you can still get in. I've looked at it and I don't see how. I talked to an attorney and said that they are able to do it. I didn't talk to someone, sorry. Someone talked to an attorney and they told us that they're able to do it. I don't know how. I haven't even bothered to look into it because I'm not looking to go there. But the permits are going for like $100,000. Some of the houses, so there was a house, it was selling for $600,000. The owner went and bought a permit, and now the house is worth like $950, and he's selling it for like $950 because of the permit. Wow. But that house, $36,000 a month in revenue. Yeah, which is insane, insane. Yeah.
Are you planning on shifting your business strategies by doing more on the equity side, or are you going to keep going with that same pace on just the cash flow? Because at some point, you probably need to maybe make a change.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the reason why I started this business was because I didn't have enough money to buy property. And so I needed to create income, not knowing that now you can buy property with other people's monies and everything, right? Like I've been in real estate for a long time now, so now I kind of know all the strategies. But I started it because I wanted cash flow to be able to buy property. The goal has always been to buy property. I've already started, right? I'm small time. Like I just bought a little tiny duplex for $132,000, right? But my goal is to buy a small 10 to 24 unit complex to do this. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have my business arbitrage it off of my entity that owns the building, right? So we can control the value and control the lender as well. I know a lot of lenders that'll work with you if you do it that way. But yeah, ultimately the goal has always been to purchase property. I want to be old and own the property and have it pay for me for doing nothing than waking up on the first, right? That's it. And
do you find certain properties perform better than your other properties, like 2 bedrooms do better than 3 bedrooms?
Yes. So 3 bedrooms kill it. March, May, June, and July. Amazing. My 3 bedroom does, and October for some reason. But in July, it's going to do something like $18,000. But in February, it barely made rent, right? So depending on your target customer, my 1 bedrooms, depending on the location, I actually, on one of my lofts, the one I told you guys about, the expensive one, I had a street artist from downtown Santa Ana paint this giant mural. It cost me like $4,500. And I'm like, this is going to kill it. It looks beautiful. And it did, only during the summer when a bunch of junk kids wanted to go and party in the place, right? During the slow months, it's back to regular rates, like $130, $160, $150. So it depends on the customer. For example, my insurance bookings that I get, man, those are gold. 30 days, something like $7,000 on a 1-bedroom apartment, you know?
Are you actively marketing to insurance companies?
Yeah,
to pick that up?
yeah, you have to. This is the beauty about it. I've been building I have like an email list of like, now it's like 6,000. I've hosted over 6,000 people. And I have every single phone number and email. And now I have my own direct website now so they can book directly with me. And I just send it out. Hey, here's my website. Go ahead and book with me. And I give them a discount because they don't have to pay the Airbnb service fee. So on a 30-day booking, they're saving $1,800, $2,000 almost. Yeah. Whew, it's a lot, guys. Sorry.
I'm remodeling a 5-bedroom that was just going to be a rent by the bedroom, which I do on another property across the street for older folks, people that really can't afford their own apartment. So I was going to get $800-900 a bedroom, everything brand new. But now you've got me thinking that the Airbnb would be, but it's a 5-bedroom.
Okay, so two things here. Number one, it's a great strategy because it's guaranteed month per bedroom every single month. So it could be more money based on the larger the property, right? The whole property. But here's the thing. There's a trade-off here. A 5-bedroom property is going to attract, just off the top of my head, probably minimum 14 people. You can house minimum 14 people, right? 2 per bedroom, 4 in the living room, right? That comes with its own set of problems, right? Can you handle a giant group coming in? They might not throw a party, but they're there for vacation, which means they might end up drinking and partying within themselves, right? It might get out of hand. Or it might be a bunch of young kids and you don't have the security systems in place and they end up throwing up, Project X in there. And so it comes with its own set of problems based on the customer you want to go with. I like 3 bedrooms. I like 4 bedrooms in specific markets. Like in Joshua Tree, you go with the tiny houses or you go with the 3 or higher. Smokies, you go with the 5 or highers, right? Big Bear, you go with the 3 or highers because it's big groups going together. People aren't going to Big Bear to have a romantic weekend. You know what I mean? They're going for the weekend to hit the slopes and enjoy nature and sit in the jacuzzi. Literally, if there's no jacuzzi at Big Bear, it's not going to get booked. Same thing with the Smokies. So it depends on your customer, right? Depending on where the property's at and if you can attract that customer, then it could make sense.
But Airbnb has metrics to study and it's pretty easy to figure it out just looking at the site.
Yes and no. You'd have to do something like when you run your numbers, there's a lot of websites like Price Labs has a dynamic tool that gives you rates of what your projected income based on income that people have paid for that size of property. AirDNA is one of them. Mashvisor is another one. Those, when I run numbers on AirDNA and it tells me that I'm going to do 10 grand a month, I know that I'm probably going to do like 15, 16 because it gives you like the lowest rate that you'll make per month. But there's nothing that'll tell you, hey, your customer is going to be these people for this 5-bedroom.
What about traveling nurses? Are you dedicating some of your portfolio to just the medical travel?
So I don't dedicate any of my units to any one customer because I house a pool of customers. The couple, right? A couple with a small child. The travel medical professionals, whether they're recovering for surgery or whether it's the doctor giving surgery or whether it's the nurse coming in or whether it's just a traveling nomad who's not just jumping from spot to spot working from home. That got really popular. So I don't dedicate one specific unit for this. I put it up there and if it gets booked and it's the rate I like, sure. And here's why. For example, medical nurses always pay you less than what the market actually is, like on Airbnb, because they're on a per diem. Unless you get the contract from an actual medical recruiter, you're going to get paid what they want to pay you because it's in their right? Let's say you get a per diem of $190, but you can get a place for $110, you're pocketing $80 a day, right? Times 30, you're making $2,400. And so I did that right, yeah. And so when you're targeting specific people during your high season, like July, why would I want to rent it to someone for $3,200 when I can rent it to a bunch of little people, right? Little reservations for $6,200. So you want to target those customers, but you never want to say, hey, this is only for them. Yeah.
But corporate housing, usually they look for, from my experience, high-rise buildings, security, fancy stuff.
Yeah.
Is it harder to rent a small building in Lake Forest in some neighborhood versus those 2 towers in Santa Ana, for example?
No, because, for example, corporate housing, depending on the business, they already have their standard of their employees. They don't care. It's like if it's large enough to be able to lease out an entire floor, then that means they have enough employees traveling for that, right? It's already in their budget. If you're doing corporate housing for other corporations, they're not going to care as long as you can provide the service that they want. I have a contractor company that books with me every 6 months without fail. They just call me and they're like, hey, we're ready to bring more people. And they just lease out 2 units side by side in one apartment complex, and they love it. They don't care. It's in a decent neighborhood. And they don't say anything. So there's not like a one size fits all type of thing. But if you're trying to do only corporate housing, you're in for a lot of work. right? Because if you want to be the one that does only corporate housing, right, not like no short-term rental like Airbnb, and you're going out and getting those contracts, you're basically building your own Airbnb to acquire these customers. So got to use what's to your advantage, right? Airbnb does all the marketing for you. You just got to know who to pick and choose from those guests that come in from that pool. No more questions? Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night?
President Biden.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I sleep pretty well. I mean, no, it depends. Look, when I first started, it was like stress of like, doing things right. Something like this week I'm stressing out because just today I think like 12 of my properties are open. And I'm like, why? Last year it wasn't booked, but last year travel hit really hard, right? Stuff like that keeps me up at night thinking, what can I do to tweak it better? Literally, it's how can I tweak it and make it better? That's what keeps me up at night. But for example, why am I open today? Well, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Downtown Santa Ana is under a big rehab, so nobody's really traveling there. 2, spring break just happened. Anytime there's a holiday, nobody travels. Like after New Year's, it's dead for a week, right? After 4th of July, it's dead for a week. Well, not July because it's July. But after, what's the last holiday that just passed? No, it was a major one. No, before that, it was like, I don't know. It was some holiday that just passed, but it was dead for a week. Anytime there's a holiday where people spend money, they won't spend money afterwards. Like after the holidays, like literally after Christmas and New Year's, January is dead. The whole month is dead. And you're like, dude, and that's where you got to get creative and start going to different customers and acquiring nurses or medical professionals or figuring out where you're getting your people. Because even though Airbnb is so awesome, they're just not filling our places, especially when you have so many. You saturate your own market, right? And then not to mention people follow you on everywhere you go. If you do, like I get followed everywhere. No joke, when I started Fullerton, in my corner, there was 1 short-term rental, and then within like a 10-mile, there was like 7. And when I jumped in there, 2 years later, there was about 77. People just follow you. They see what's working, right? Websites like Airbnb will tell you, hey, there's a big demand here. Same thing with Santa Ana. When I came to Santa Ana right after the pandemic, there was probably like 37 short-term rentals. I kid you not, I did all the math, and I'm like, I run all the numbers. I looked at all the data, and right now there's 350. Right? I control 48 of those, right? My old business partner has like maybe 15 there. And then there's a guy who follows me everywhere I go. And he's probably got like 20 of them in there. Yeah, so he's got like 20 now. So it starts to become this like, oh, the new hotspot. And then city regulations happen. And then they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then they end up leaving somewhere else. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you have your own website where your previous customers are booking. Is it synced with Airbnb?
No. So it's synced with my property management software. I use a PMS called Hospitable. So it's actually not synced yet. The guy that built the website is getting what's called an API connection to the actual property management, so I can sync calendar, pricing, messaging, all of that. These guys promised me this like 4 months ago, and it's still a work in progress. But in the meantime, my VAs, I've trained them to where, hey, whenever we get a booking, just block out this calendar, and this is the process of how it goes, so that there's no issues.
So those 3 are actual people, right?
Yeah, there are 2 ladies out in the Philippines, and I love them. They're awesome. Yeah. Actually, I have a total of 6 VAs right now. One's for everything. One edits my podcast. One does my present, like, it was funny. So this girl ended up working for me, and she was my night VA, and she was a school teacher, and she loves making presentations. All my processes that I tell you guys about, like when I create a standard video, she goes and makes like this big, like, what are those presentations? PowerPoints. She makes these PowerPoints, and I'm like, this is awesome. So now, like, if I were to, like, if you go, hey, how do you handle, hey, I have my unit, how do you handle, like, a guest who's throwing a party? I'll just literally send you that PowerPoint presentation of, like, how I do it, which is cool. So now she does all of that for me. Another one does, we're actually sourcing VAs now, because my main VA, she's like, I had a guy who goes, hey, can you give me a VA? And she's like, why would you just, this is why I love her. I love people that can come up with stuff. She goes, why would we just go out and find a VA and give it to them after you've trained them? Tell them you're gonna charge them $6, because we pay them $350, right? She goes, tell them you're gonna charge them $6, right? I'll train them for all you do, like all your entire business. They just literally implement them to their units. That guy has to obviously train the VA for their units because I don't know their units. And you charge them $6 an hour and you make $2.50. And I was like, think that'll work? And she's like, I know it'll work. There's a demand. So we did, and now we got like 4 out there right now.
It's like staffing business.
Yeah, it's like a virtual assistant staffing company now. And I'm not pushing it. It's just whenever people ask me. And so what I did is I actually gave her $1 for any person that they hire, and I keep $1. So I pay her $7.50 or something like that. So I technically pay her less because I'm taking $1 from all the other VAs to lower my cost, and she's making more because she's keeping $1, right? So, and we have an awesome relationship. I love her. Yeah. Cool. No more. Oh yeah.
So for you said Anaheim is almost impossible to do Airbnb right now.
So they say. I don't go into it because it's almost near impossible. But I'm starting to hear people who are saying that yes, it's now allowed. I just don't know. I can't say like, hey, it is or not because I've never tried to go for them. But I do know that the permits are going for minimum 100 grand if you want to buy one, which is near impossible, right? 100 grand is a lot of money. Unless you're doing like a long-term investment. Guys, some of these houses like near Disneyland, like within like a 5-mile radius, are doing like $46,000 a month. That's worth a $100,000 permit. You know what I mean? You'll get that back in like 6 months and then some.
So as long as you don't mind to pay for the permits, you're okay to go.
Well, you got to find it too. They're rare. They go up, you got to find who's selling them. And it's hard to get them right. Like they fly. That house that I was telling you guys about, it sold within like 3 days, right? It was gone. And it went up almost 250 grand just because of the permit.
Oh, another question is like, have you ever suggested the homeowner to change the big living room into smaller cubicles or bedrooms to facilitate your needs to short term? Or
No.
is no use?
No, well, there's a use for everything, so it depends on your customer. I know a guy who's doing, what was he doing? Like your brother's friend that does the bedrooms for the contractors or something like that?
Oh, he just rents out the bedroom.
Yeah, so there's a guy that rents out per bedroom. If let's say you have a contracted company and these guys travel in groups and they want to stay in one large house, it would make sense to do something like that. I don't have a need for that. That's not my customer, right? Not to mention, I don't tell any of my landlords to do anything with their properties. I just expect them to be nicely managed. That's it. And to be.
Like apartments rather than big houses.
That's my niche. Yes, I do apartments only. I'll take a big house, depends on where it's at.
So
but
you don't have to deal with HOA because it's pretty troublesome.
I don't deal with any HOA because it's troublesome. Yeah. Okay. Most HOAs don't let you do this. And even if you do 30-day minimums, they find a way to stop you from doing 30-day minimums. They'll change their rules. Unless you own the HOA, stay away from an HOA.
And so far, you feel like short term is still is the best thing you want to do, and your goal is like.
Yeah, I love short-term rentals.
You want to do a long-term rental or whole.
Nope. I don't want to do any long-term rentals. I know how to do short-term rentals so well that it would make no sense for me to do long-term rentals. I would be leaving money on the table if I did long-term rentals. Only because I know how to handle almost I've literally been through everything now. I had a roof fall on a guest one time, you know? Termites. I mean, only thing I haven't done is bed bugs. Thank God. Those are the worst. I know somebody who did. But you know, last night cops showed up and broke down a door. That was a first for me. But once you know how to handle a situation, like I wouldn't do anything unless I absolutely, like if I owned a property in a place that says, hey, you can no longer do short-term rentals, then I don't have a choice, right? But there's always an exit strategy. If the city comes and says you can't do short-term rentals and I have 40 units, okay, well, what can I do? 30-day minimums. I now transition to midterm rentals. All I got to do is focus really hard on getting those medical professional contracts that still pay top dollar, right? I got to go after contractors. I got to go after people who are staying 30 days or minimum. And they're out there. You just got to find them and be the person that they choose to book. If that doesn't work out, I can do a long-term furnished rental. Nothing's included other than furniture at a $500 upcharge per month, and I'm still making $500 a month. And then my lease is up, I pick up my stuff, and I go.
And for your observation and experience, so the Georgia Tree and the Inland Empire is much better than Orange County as far as the cost. So you would rather do the short-term or Airbnb in the Inland Empire?
I'm all in Orange County.
Orange County is not so attractive compared to the Inland Empire because the cost is higher.
Well, he said, she said. I mean, you might think that Inland Empire is better, but I think Orange County's better. So because I don't know though. I've never been in Inland Empire, right? So, but I know because I'm in Orange County what I can make in Orange County. I know people who are in Inland Empire who are doing amazing. I actually might end up going out there at some point in time. Actually, I just bought a house for my parents in Jurupa Valley, which is Inland Empire. And so it's a half-acre lot. We just cleared out the back. We're going to build a duplex in the back, and it's going to be a short-term rental. Once that's done, I'll know how it does, right?
And the short-term renter doesn't care whether it's close to the beach or not because they are traveling.
No, they do.
To California.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. It depends. So some people care if it's far. Some people care that it's close. I mean, some people, when they come to Disneyland, they're not going to stay at the Inland Empire. They're going to pay top dollar to stay in your Disneyland, right? So it depends on where they're going and the customer you're attracting. Like example, Ontario, right? You can get units out there and the rent is significantly cheaper, but people still fly there because people still fly. It's an international airport. So I just like OC because number one, it's where I have all my investors, which is literally like, I actively don't look for units anymore. Literally people call me and they're like, hey, I got this. Hey, I got that. Hey, you want it? Hey, I got to leave. My contractor guys that I've been friends with, literally I'm like, hey, if you have a new building that's being built, put me in contact with the owner. And they'll do. That's how I got the 30 unit complex. So I really don't look for properties anymore. I just wait for them to be handed to me. So like to answer your question over there, when you're like, hey, do you want to go and build, and to buy stuff? I've been saying I'm going to buy stuff for years. But every time I go and actually try to buy something, someone calls me with the new building. And I'm like, I can get that money back in 9 months, so I'll take over the new building instead. Which is why I grew so fast and how I was able to do it because of that. Seriously, it's becoming an addiction. It's like I just want to keep opening units. Yeah, because it makes sense, right? Look, I can put in, even if I go on the expensive side and do $15,000 on a one-bedroom apartment with rent and deposit included, I know for a fact that if I'm going to take it, because I run my numbers and I go in the right places, I can get that money back in 9 months. No questions asked.
Have you figured an annual cash-on-cash return or an equivalent cap rate for your activities?
I did at one point. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was high. It was up there. Yeah, not off the top of my head, no. There was a guy who, I'll give you an example. So I don't know the percentage, but a buddy of mine who bought an 8-unit in Houston, he bought it for $175,000. Overpaid. He overpaid on top of it. Yeah, I know. It was about, 8-9 months ago. And he's like, yeah, I just got this really cool 8-unit complex, and it was beat up, it was ugly, but it was in a very good area. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing long-term rentals? So we started talking, he started hearing me talk. And he's like, hey, you think I can make short-term rentals? And we ran his numbers, and he was doing, I think market rent was like $800 a month. So he was gonna do some like really ridiculous, like something like $7,000 a month or something he was gonna end up doing. We ran his numbers, and he's doing $22,000 a month now. And so he put in $130,000 into it, remodeled the whole thing. He's going live next week, and he can't wait. And I'm like, bro, you're perfect for the summer because he's gonna make a kill. How do you go from $7,000 to $21,000 minimum? That's the minimum projected that we came up with. And all we did was run numbers. And I'm like, so that's whatever that it is in.
So you were looking to buy multi-units, actually.
Yes.
Because you're saying this is the most profitable.
For me.
But you are not looking for luxury house like new house, new building.
No, I do. So I was just telling him I want to buy a house in a cabin in Big Bear by the end of the year. I don't like to leave my money tied up until I'm ready to do that, right? Not to mention there's so many awesome strategies for real estate that you really don't need to leave money tied up anymore, right? And so if I'm going to put in $250,000 on a luxury house, how fast am I going to get that money back? As opposed to my 8 months. And $250,000 gets me 25 units, right? Cash flow and $25,000 minimum per month. Or I can put it in one house, $10,000 a month if it's in a really good luxury area, right? So it depends on what you want. The goal is to buy, always. The goal is always to buy. Because again, I want to have property paying for me when I'm older. I don't want to be doing, this is a job, right? I'm running a business. It's not passive. It's not as passive as having long-term rentals.
So there's always some customer looking for luxury, even they
Yeah.
are having a short-term vacation.
I have a friend, and she's awesome at this, but she has a house where they charge $7,000 per night. But, they got a butler. They even offer helicopter pickup service. Dude, it's insane. They got a chef.
In Orange County?
No, it's in some, I don't know where it's at. Actually, the same girl, I think it's in Arizona, actually. This girl, have you guys ever seen the glass house in Joshua Tree? Yeah. It's like the site, she manages that one. And so that's like, what, $4,000 a night? Something like that, 45, $5,000 a night. And so I don't know what it is, but it's ridiculous, right? And those are luxury rentals. But they're high maintenance properties. You got to have a it's a completely different ballpark. That's where the money's at. I mean, $7,000 a night, like it's insane. You know, you're doing, geez, I don't know, what is that? Like a couple $100,000 a month. You don't even need to be fully occupied, you know? And your mortgage is a couple $1,000. Even if it was $12,000 a month, 2 reservations, 2 nights will pay for it, right? Some of these, like, she's really an advocate of the luxury short-term rental markets because, like, one of her smoky cabins is like an ultra luxury cabin, and she was showing me projections, and she did something like 42,000 profit in 1 month, and I'm like, dude, is that like after expenses, like profit? And she's like, this is like mortgage paid off, utility person paid off, VAs paid off, and I was like, okay, you know, that's worth it. So it depends. It really depends. Short-term rentals are awesome, guys. They really are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I borrowed a credit card from my brother. That's what it was.
But you were sure you were going to be able to bring that.
Honestly, no. Okay, I knew because I did the research, but you never know. It was my first one. I said, hey, I got to take a risk on something. And honestly, I could have paid back the credit card with my job anyway if I failed at it, right? And I'm like, I just, talking to people and being around people, it's like, I can tell, for example, I can tell you that wholesaling's never going to work, but he's going to go, dude, wholesaling works. Because he's done it. So now I'm around people that can convince me otherwise, right? Same thing if I can tell you, hey, short-term renting a 1-bedroom, if he tells you it doesn't work, I'm here to tell you that I have 44 and it works, right? If done correctly. So I was around the right people who were telling me, hey, it's going to work. Hey, this is what we do. I met a lot of people in short-term rentals that were like, about short-term rentals back before they were super popular. And because of that, I took a plunge and, I mean, it paid off. Yeah. So.
Do you use like Booking or any other, like VRBO or
Yeah.
Airbnb?
Yeah.
Or everything?
Yeah, I use everything. Yeah.
When are you speaking again? I'm gonna bring my wife.
I don't. I do a meetup sometimes. I do it maybe once every other month. So I'm gonna have one in. Can I talk about my meetup? Yeah. I don't. Okay, cool. I do it in Santa Ana. I don't like be like, hey. So in Santa Ana, because you know Joe's. So actually, the first time I ever spoke about this was for Joe, on the Zoom meetup, and I was all nervous that time. I was like, am I gonna talk like? Is my business really good? Like I don't know. Turns out it is, right? But I've spoken, like somebody flew me out to New York to talk about this, which was kind of cool. But I do a once a month meetup, and we just talk about short-term rentals. It's a short-term rental meetup, but I don't do like actual speaking gigs like this. I just like to talk about short-term rentals. Like if you find me at a bar and you buy me a beer and you ask me a question about short-term rentals, I'll have you there for 3 hours. Like no joke.
Is that on meetup.com?
It's on Eventbrite, I think. We switch it up. This last one. So I posted it on Instagram, and 140 people ended up showing up. And it was between me and another buddy of mine who owns a couple cabins in the Smokies. And I was like, hey, you want to do, because the last one I did prior to that was maybe like 24 people. And then when I combined them with them, and I've gotten a little bit popular on Instagram, and because of Bigger Pockets, like it's just blown up like crazy. Like everybody's always reaching out now. When I did this last meetup, 148 people showed up. We ended up blocking the entire patio of the 4th Street Market. But you know, short-term rentals are the shiny new object right now. Everybody wants to go wherever they're talking about them.
What's your meetup called? What's your meetup?
There's no name to it. I literally just posted up once. The next one we're doing is, when I tell you it was May, the 2nd week of May. And I'll just put up, right? The 3rd week? No, we're going to be in Houston that week for the 21st. It's going to be the 2nd or 3rd week of May. I don't know. But I just posted on Instagram, and then once I do that, then I put it up either on Eventbrite or I actually do have a meetup.com, but I don't, one second, but I've never actually used it. I only use it when I'm with Joe.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what your socials are. So.
Yeah, my Instagram is Rafa_Loza, but the O is with the 0, so L0ZA. I have a bunch of videos and units you guys can take a look at in there as well. I have a podcast called The Big Break Show that I started with my buddy. who's awesome at medical professional contracts. So if you guys want to take a listen, he talks about it. He's like a genius. So he's the guy that goes after the recruiting contracts. So if you get a recruiting contract, instead of getting paid the per diem, you get paid the contract, which is like a 30-day, $7,000 payout, like some ridiculous like that. But yeah, it's called The Big Break Show. And I just started. We're like 15 episodes in. It's fun. I've been enjoying the journey. Other than that, The Big Break Show. Yeah, it's on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. But yeah, other than that, like I just talk about stuff like here when Joe invites me or like on Instagram. Thanks, guys. You guys were awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Joe.